The decision of the Nigerian Senate to probe the Ajaokuta Steel Company seems to be enjoying widespread support among Nigerians. The senators had on Tuesday constituted a 10-member ad hoc committee to ascertain the reasons behind the moribund state of Ajaokuta Steel Company and the National Oil Mining Company, despite the alleged payment of $496 million to contractors between 2008 and the present. Deputy Senate President Barau Jibrin announced the composition of the committee. The resolution to set up the panel followed the adoption of a motion sponsored by the senator representing Kogi Central Senatorial District in the National Assembly, Natasha Akpoti Udwahan. Kunle is an oil and gas expert, extractive industry specialist, and policy analyst. He joins me now from our Abuja studio. Good evening, Mr. Kunle, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ruben Abati.
Well, I mean,
thank you very much.
Yes, in the introduction, I talked about the probe that the Senate has now called for to investigate what happened to Ajaokuta Steel Company and the National Iron Ore Company that is also in Kogi State. And this project, the Ajaokuta Steel, we've been on it since 1979. Cumulatively, we're told that it has got about $8 billion. It's supposed to create jobs for about 500,000 Nigerians. But many years later, no steel has been produced. The hope of industrialization has not happened. So really, the Nigerian iron and steel industry is in coma. What went wrong? And do you support the idea of a probe that the Senate is now talking about?
Well, okay. Dr. Abati, look, I think I'm happy that these conversations has continued to trend, because your platform and those of us who occasionally come on your platform, I think our job is to inform the country and the world at large appropriately, not to misinform. And our job also is to help the people in leadership in this country to see from the perspective of some of us who have been around and who have been participants in some of these national projects that were supposed to have been catalytic to the development of Nigeria or to the industrialization of Nigeria. If you look back to the command era, when government, the ambitious government of all nations in the world, were to create industries, were to command anything to be in those days. And Nigeria commanded Abuja to be, and Abuja became as it is today. Nigeria commanded Ajaokuta Steel Company Limited to be, and it became Delta Steel, NAVCON, which is notorious today, and aluminum smelter. All these huge, ambitious projects were commanded, and they happened. Even the command era created restaurants, created clearing agents. So the steel industry of Nigeria was babysitted by the government. If you see the first development plan, second development plan, third development plan of Nigeria, you will see steel infrastructure and steel development. So now you mentioned about the probe. Well, Senator Natasha, congratulations to her that she's now a senator from that same locality where the Ajaokuta Steel Company Limited is located and where National Iron Ore Mining Company in Itakwe is located. So she was born inside the steel complex. She's emotionally attached to that place. So I congratulate her, and I hope her effort may be able to bring out some truth about the status of Ajaokuta Steel Company Limited and National Iron Ore Company Limited. Having said that, I have nothing against the issue of probe or no probe. that is Senate matter. I am more concerned about the status of the iron and steel industry in Nigeria. That is, and the new development that the president created. Mr. President, in his wisdom, decided to create Ministry of Steel Development out of the Ministry of Solid Mineral, which was created in 1995 by late General Abacha. So now I want us to look more into the steel sector. I will not want to talk much about the probe of the Senate because that one is they have a lot of work to do there. So let us talk about the steel sector, Dr. Abati, so as to let's diagnose it properly and situate it properly for the government and for the Nigerian people to see exactly where things are today. It's very sad. Where things are today is very sad for this country. When I look back, 1995, I spent 1 week in Ajaokuta Steel Complex trying to put the management there together at that time to see how they could salvage the plant, because that time they have just only about 6 or 7% completion and outstanding. But the Russians were preparing to go because as at that time, the Soviet Union has been dissolved in 1991. So the company was ready to go. And I think late General Abacha settled the Russian to go, which unfortunately till today, Ajaokuta Steel Company Limited have not recovered from that exit in 1996. I did a memo on my institute letterhead in Kaduna at that time, Economic Reengineering Institute, to General Abacha, to please complete Ajaokuta. I remember I copy Alhaji Hamza Zayad, TCPC, and I remember vividly, I think that letter was replied by one person wrote back on that letter is, I think, Mr. Peter Atedo side. I think he responded to that letter, if I remember vividly, because I think I sent letters to all the bank chief executives, I remember, that look, don't let us miss the opportunity of not completing Ajaokuta, just that gap. But today, I have a different opinion about the steel complex now because, okay, that time was that time. I think we missed the opportunity. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, but is the iron and steel industry still viable? Is it still competitive? What does the Nigerian government need to do to revive it, if it is possible? Both the steel company and also the iron ore company. That is
why, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Abati. That is the core issue. As at today, looking at the global environment, looking at the status of Nigerian competitiveness, looking at the infrastructural availability in Nigeria, power, railway, all the critical infrastructure to drive industrialization, the iron and steel sector of Nigeria is not competitive as at today. Any type of iron or metal you need, you can import them cheaply if you import scientifically, not to import crookedly. If you import in a very scientific way, you can import all your need today for your development. Having said this, does not mean that you cannot be made to be competitive in steel making. But that has to be a deliberate government policy to complete all the infrastructural projects that will support steel making competitively. But without those apparatus, those infrastructural apparatus, you cannot make steel competitively in this country today. If you come with me to China and see what is going on in China or India, you will see that we cannot produce steel competitively today, as at today.
How about technology? The technology that the Russians installed up till 1996, will it still be relevant today, given the rate of technological advancement in virtually every sector.
Yes, Dr. Abati, the technology by basic technology, that technology is still very okay, but in China, they are phasing it out now. Okay, because that same plant in Ajaokuta today was built in India between 1956, 57, 58, 59 at somewhere called Bilala, somewhere in Kolkata. So, and the Indians used that plant to advance because people like Tata, who were already in steel, people like Mittal, they have used that plant also to advance. Okay, the technology in Ajaokuta today, as at that time that it was given to us, it was okay. Ajaokuta was in a rural Guinea Savannah location that time. Urbanization from Lokoja, from Okene, was not yet as rapid as this. Even to be the village outside by River Niger there on your way to Anyagba was not yet as big as it was just a trading post for Royal Niger in those days. But today, the whole place is urbanized. So how are you going to blast furnace with coking coal in a location like that? So automatically that technology is not suitable for that place anymore. It has to be modified. You have to bring the technology in Delta. Delta still have a better technology, gas furnace, oxygen, hydrogen technology. You have to modify Ajaokuta if you want to still go ahead with Ajaokuta. If government want to deliberately complete Ajaokuta, if they have the wherewithal and the political will to do that, then they need to modify it. If they don't modify it, we will not earn carbon credit. We will be penalized by the Sustainable Development Committee of the world because we are going to feed coking coal to the blast furnace. And Lokoja is a state capital, not more than 30 kilometers away. Okene is there, Adogo is there, all the surrounding. Then you will have so much sulfur and carbon, rain. And if you blast that furnace, you cannot off it in 5 years. You must continue to feed coking coal if you want to produce liquid steel. Okay. So it's not suitable. It's not suitable at all anymore by that level of urbanization.
Well,
that has now encroached into the place.
You refer to the Ministry of Steel Development, which is a new creation. Now, what is the wisdom in recreating the Ministry of Steel Development out of the former ministry we had, solid minerals and mines?
Yeah, yes, incidentally, I was the first consultant to work on the Ministry for Solid Mineral Development in 1995. I had a big national workshop on solid mineral development at Lokoja. And we said that time that the Ministry of Power and Steel, that the steel component of Ministry of Power should move to Ministry of Solid Mineral. But it remained a contentious issue because of the way the political leadership in Nigeria, the way we work at times. But for functionality, some of us that were privileged to be around there at that time, we insisted that look for functionality, still to move to solid mineral. But if you remember President Shagari in 1979 to 1983, Mama Makele was the Minister for Steel Development, if you remember, and Alhaji Mama Makele was living in Ajaokuta. There's a ministerial quarters there. I remember we were students. Okay, so it has a functional meaning. But in the case of President Tinubu now, I'm not informed at all whether anybody did a diagnostic report for him to see the status of the steel industry in Nigeria before he went ahead to decouple Ministry of Steel from Ministry of Solid Mineral. I'm not aware whether he had such a gathering of intelligence of the status of the steel industry. Because when you go to Ministry of Solid Mineral, what is what is iron? Iron is solid mineral. What is limestone? I hope you understand. What is coke? Coking coal. So all these, if you watch, but okay, you separated the ministry to make it functional. And in the landscape of the steel development in this country today, Ministry for Steel Development has only Ajaokuta Steel Company Limited and the National Iron Raw Material Development Agency in Kaduna. And then you have National Iron Ore Mining Company in Itape. Then you have the Metallurgical Development Center in Jos. Then you have the Metallurgical Training Institute in Onitsha. So these are the components that makes up the Ministry of Steel Development today. But how functional can the new ministry now get working is another issue. Because the private sector, like the African Industry Group in Lagos, in Ikorodu, the Kuptas, they have done so well in steel making. But when you go and look at what they are doing at that private sector level, you will see that their effort also will have not been good enough to industrialize Nigeria, but they have survived in their business as private all these years. So, and if you go further to look at Osogbo Steel Rolling Mill, look at Delta Steel, look at Katsina Steel Rolling Mill built by Kobe of Japan and Jos Steel Rolling Mill, you will now ask yourself that, okay, what is left for this ministry to do? Because Osogbo has been privatized, Katsina privatized, Jos privatized, Delta Steel privatized. So only Ajaokuta Steel Company Limited and Neomco are left. Neomco is the National Iron Ore Mining Company in Itape, where you have to get the iron ore out as a feedstock to Ajaokuta for liquid steel production. But having said that, that is enough work for the Ministry of Steel Development. If you make me minister there today, maybe I relocate to Lokoja or to Ajaokuta, because that is the only business left. Well, then the macroeconomic environment and the industry-wide contact has to also be established. So I think the president must have been thinking that to make this ministry more functional, let me decouple it from Ministry of Solid Mineral and make it stand alone so that maybe it can be more functional. The same way I want now Ministry of Transport to be renamed Ministry for Railway Development. The president should kindly do that so that we will now know that the railway ministry is standing on its own to develop railway in this country. So because the word Ministry of Transport now has no meaning, because you have decoupled maritime development. Ministry for Maritime Development is standing on its own now. Ministry for Aviation is standing on its own. So the Ministry for Transport, where it should be Ministry for Railway Development, because you have Ministry for Highway Development, which is for roads. That is the one you call Ministry of Works, which is also an obsolete language. And these are some of the modifications you need to bring into government to show that you are trendy, you are modern, you are not remaining the same way you have been since in the 70s. What is Ministry of Works? What is Ministry of Transport? Ministry for Railway Development, Ministry for Highway Development. That makes me more functional. So the Ministry for Steel Development maybe can be made more functional depending on, let's see further X-ray and diagnose let's continue this conversation and let's see. Let me further listen to you,
okay,
Dr. Abati.
Mr. Kunle, the Ajaokuta Steel is under probe, $8 billion down the drain, advice, if I may use that expression. And then now, the Minister of Steel Development was in China recently, and he came back and said the Chinese government, China and Nigeria, they are going to build another steel complex. Meanwhile, Ajaokuta Steel is moribund. And they also said that one of the things they are planning is that their Chinese partners will take over Ajaokuta Steel and produce military hardware there, while there will be a brand new steel complex as part of President Tinubu's renewed hope agenda. What kind of ambition is that? What sense do you make out of that?
Dr. Abati, you know, I've not been privileged to share any report from the Minister of Steel Development since he came back from China. But I am very familiar with China, and I'm familiar with the industrialization level in China. Ajaokuta Steel Complex as it is today, when we were making effort, when we were doing privatization, we were driving towards saying, can the Chinese take over Ajaokuta? All the parameters that the Chinese were looking at, that is before even the concessioning of the company to the Indians. The Chinese were looking at what is the navigational status of River Niger? What is the railway, the railroad infrastructure that will feed Ajaokuta? Because when I hear that the Chinese say they are coming to manufacture military hardware in Ajaokuta, it sounds very good, but those of us who know the structure of Ajaokuta and what is required to be put on ground in Ajaokuta, we are not talking, even if you decouple Ajaokuta today to jobbing, foundry, forge shop, mechanical, if you let's say you even just unbundle Ajaokuta today and said a Chinese company is coming to take just the forge or mechanical shop there, all the facilities they need to produce anything in that place today, all the components they still need to import, is not an assignment of 1 year or 2 years. So we seem not to know what it is to produce steel or to go into manufacturing, heavy industry. It's not a tea party. It requires a serious physical planning, incentives, packages, infrastructures, and so on and so forth. So if we have, Nigeria spent about 5 billion Dutch mark as at 1995 to build Ajaokuta. When you translate it by the exchange rate as at that time, it was about $3.5 billion. So with take or minus $4 billion, plus all the other expenses now that has been made into Ajaokuta from that 1995-96 to date, you'll be talking of about $6 billion that has gone into Ajaokuta, including roads, road infrastructure, all these the supporting infrastructures, including the rail to Delta Steel. Now, that whole asset is idle there today. It cannot be made functional without you injecting another $1 billion into that place. So if you ask me that I don't know what the Chinese, I don't know whether they have come and do a diagnostic review of the whole place, because the MD there now, or they call him administrator, sole administrator, maybe he has presented some things to them in China. So if they need to, they will do their homework. It's not as easy. It's not as easy. I feel for the minister, because I don't even know where he will start from. I feel for him, but those of us who have good knowledge of the environment there, and the complexity of the plant, if we were consulted, if we had the privilege to sit with the president before he made that pronouncement, we will tell him certain things. That, look, this place is a limited liability company. The steel complex of Nigeria was based on integrated steel development scheme. There were railway projects that were to go to Adamawa from Ajaokuta to go and bring some material. There were railway projects that were to go through Osogbo to Onibode in Ogun State to bring Onibode clay to Ajaokuta. There were so many things there. In fact, there were arrangements to go to Calabar to bring limestone. If you see the development plan of Ajaokuta, that's why when I listen to some people you have been talking with, it's like people they seem not to know what we are talking about. If you see how integrated, how huge that plan was, you will just laugh at us that how can this country just bungle this thing like this? How? But that is the way we have bungled everything. We bungle our educational system. We bungle the health system. We bungle our... So you ask, where is this problem lying? The answer is lying on leadership and knowledge. Leadership, knowledge, honesty, and capacity to deliver. So I wait to see what the Chinese are bringing. Look, incidentally, but let me use this opportunity to also highlight for the Nigerian people and the people in leadership. Nigeria had defense contract arrangement with Steer in Bauchi for Defense Industry Corporation in Kaduna. With the same pattern, we were working with the Brazilian. Defense Industry Corporation of Nigeria was working with the Brazilian. Brazil set up Defense Industry Corporation, see where they are today. Steer Bauchi was to do some armored vehicles and trucks for the defense industry. What has happened to it? So when I hear about some of these arrangements, ad hoc arrangements, they are not. I'm not too optimistic about. I know the Chinese very well. I know them. I'm familiar with what they can do and what they cannot do. They are very serious people. Very serious. So I wait. Don't let me preempt anything. I wait.
Well, Mr. Kunle,
God will spare our life.
You refer to the first National Development Plan, second National Development Plan, third National Development Plan. Nigerian leaders during that period, 60s to the 80s, the whole plan was to ensure that Nigeria became industrialized. Hence, they set up NAFCON, ASCON, the hydropower projects, even Ajaokuta Steel, Alaja Steel, and all that. Is there any hope, with all the failures we have seen around, that Nigeria will ever become an industrialized country? If we've been on it since 1960 to 2024, and all we're talking about is moribund, and we're going to invite the Chinese, we're going to pay some money to some people, will this country ever become industrialized?
Dr. Abati, our political infrastructure is very weak for development. I say this with all sense of responsibility. Our political leadership infrastructure is very weak for development. We had a sustained struggle after the Civil War in 1970 up to 1975. When I use the word sustained struggle, that is, Gowon was trying to lead Nigeria out of the Civil War psychological problem and physical dislocations across the country. And it was not an easy period for the country. But in spite of that, you will see that they gravitated towards industrializing Nigeria from that 1970 to 1975. The development plan, you remember how Professor Adedeji from ECA was working closely with Gowon. In fact, that was part of what led to the creation of ECOWAS. The spirit of ECOWAS was economic integration, so that we could take some special raw materials from any part of West Africa, or we go there and invest. Okay, that is, don't let me go into that one again. Let me go back to your question. All those mega projects you just mentioned, Delta Steel was built with about $1.2 billion. And NAFCON was built with about $1.3 billion US. NAFCON, which is notorious today. We had Federal Superphosphate in Kaduna, built and supported by Commonwealth Investment Corporation, including Nigerian Sugar Company, Basita, including Nigerian Paper Mill in Jeba. So all these industries, in fact, Iwokwe Paper Mill, and then Okuiboku Newsprint, all these projects were very, very good for the country, but including Ajaokuta. But as at that time, if you did not take advantage of the global trend for industrialization that time, once you miss it, you cannot get there. We miss it. Japan, they got it. South Korea got it. I can list many countries that got it. They got it, and they secured their domestic economy firmly on industrialization. Today, Nigeria, we miss all these opportunities. Petrochemical, we miss it. We miss almost, if it is not because some companies now came to take up our petrochemical element, it would have been the same like Warri. Warri refinery and petrochemical. Kaduna refinery and petrochemical. Today, what has happened? Which petrochemical do we produce from Warri now? None. We're supposed to produce propylene and carbon black for tire industry from Warri. Today we are not. It's dead. Kaduna, the same thing. Kaduna had a loop plant, linear alkaline benzene plant, where you get your paraffin wax and base oil. But today, what has happened? So it was the best period from 1975 again. If you take further what President General Obasanjo did from that 1975 after Muritala's assassination to 1980, see what he did. He tried to rapidly transform the country, but again, leadership quality. Within the period of Shagari, you remember what happened. To complete some of those projects became a problem. And immediately, General Buhari took over in 1983-84. Many of these projects suffered setback because leadership was ad hoc. No steady leadership to drive through some of these projects. So when General Buhari came, he condemned some of these projects. In fact, including Abuja. Abuja was slowed down. Ajaokuta was slowed down because General Buhari said there is no money, that the MPN government was reckless. So they slowed down everything. So to go back to the issue you have just asked, Dr. Abati, because we don't have the luxury of time to go all this economic history, but they are still good for the people in leadership. If you give me the opportunity, even though you invited me here, I have said I don't even want to talk anymore. But at times we need to still talk. Because if you see what we have lost, what this country have lost, particularly my generation, that were to be the backbone, the brain box for the development of this country. What we have lost is humongous. It's unquantifiable. Ajaokuta, you talk of 6 billion. What we have lost in Ajaokuta is about $20 billion because all the technical skilled workers that will have produced, all the byproduct of Ajaokuta Steel Complex that will have multiplied into other industries, we have lost it.
Well,
so
Mr.
imagine all the engineers that were trained in India and
Kunle.
China, we have lost it. So let me just allow you again to let's continue the conversation.
If I may just come in here, and we're trying to wrap up now. Somebody sent this to me. He said, Dr. Abati, it will also be useful to discuss the steel industry with respect to the polymer industry. For instance, the use of steel is highly minimized considering the role of polymers. 60 to 80% of car components are made of polymers and composite, same as other things like fiber optics. So this person is more or less saying our focus on the steel industry is probably, a bit outdated. Do you share his view?
Thank you very much, Dr. Abati. Polymer, yes, I'm very familiar with polymer and the synthetic material. Look, Dr. Abati, let's go back to human evolution. Stone Age, Iron and Bronze Age. Dr. Abati, till as we are talking, no nation, we have not developed modern society on any other thing more than gravel, stone, sand, and iron. The modern industrial world is built on iron. As we are talking, Dr. Abati, there is still no alternative to iron and steel, to basic metal. That is why I still believe Nigeria should build their own aluminum smelting the same way like UAE, like Qatar, like Saudi Arabia. There is no alternative to steel. There is composite material. Advanced material sciences have come where you can mix so many materials for certain purposes, for at different temperature, different level of applications. You understand me now? So it's not, I know what is, I was in the biggest optic fiber factory in the world in December in China. Fiber Home in Wuhan is sitting on about 50,000 square meter of land. I was there. And I see the silica, the material for making fiber. So The whole steel structure that built that factory is still iron. It's still iron. So we cannot do without iron. Hilton Hotel, where we are talking now, the structure, the steel structure of Hilton Hotel is iron. So the guy is correct. Polymer has advanced very well. That is gas. Yeah, but you still cannot do without steel. Nigeria is a young country. We need steel.
Finally.
But I'm not saying we should. I'm not saying we should produce steel uncompetitively. No.
Finally.
We should find a way out. Yeah.
Finally, to go back to where we started from.
Yes, please.
The probe. Now, many Nigerians support the probe. And you have also said it is in order. And you congratulated Senator Natasha Akpoti. But some 5 traditional rulers in Kogi State, from Kogi Central, OE of this, OE of that, they have said that the probe is not necessary and that Senator Natasha Akpoti is working in isolation and did not carry the people of Kogi Central along before going to the floor of the Senate to say that Ajaokuta still should be probed. Do these traditional rulers, do they have a say in the matter?
Yeah, Dr. Abati, you see part of the problem why Nigeria cannot develop. This heterogeneous and complex setting of our country is a problem. Because I am part of the people. I was there the day we handed over Itape, National Iron Ore Mining Company, to Global Steel. The late Ohinoi was there with us, with the DG of BP. Many of us are still alive. All this emotion and sentiment will not solve our problem. The reality of industrialization is not about emotion, whether the factory is in your location. Okay, now those traditional chiefs that said they should not probe, Dr. Abati, give me like 5 minutes. Let me run to you. When the Minister of Steel, Power and Steel, concession Ajaokuta Steel Company Limited, we were against it. The first concession was to Sol Gas. We said Ajaokuta Steel Company Limited is a limited liability company and should be governed by law of karma. So you either sell the share or you have to find a way. Concession is not the way. Then Sol Gas lost out and the thing went to Global Steel, Primod Mita. So when Primod Mita took over the concession, BP, we insisted again that Global Steel must come to buy share because Ajaokuta Steel Company Limited is a limited liability company. So we must privatize it appropriately. Now, when President Yaradua came, there was a conspiracy that time against maybe President Obasanjo or against maybe BP, because we were the agency. They now said the people in Ajaokuta Global Steel were stealing some machines in Ajaokuta. There was all sorts of allegation. Out of sentiment and emotion, they said those Indians should get out of the place. They were forced out of the place. They said they should not be there. So meanwhile, they were the one in Delta Steel and they were the one in Ajaokuta and Itape. So when you force them out, the agreement they had with the Ministry of Power and Steel, they had to enforce it. So now the traditional chiefs that are saying somebody should not do probe or they should not check anything. Look, if we who are sitting here today, if somebody come and got $490 million out of him being frustrated out of Ajaokuta, and the Senate said they want to check how such amount of money was awarded to them. And some traditional rulers are saying, no, don't do it, don't do that. You see, this is part of the problem. These people don't even understand what we are talking about. Do they know what it means to industrialize a nation? I'm not saying that Senate is right or wrong. I'm not saying they should not probe. But I'm just giving this background for people to know that some of us have worked sleepless nights. We didn't make money. We didn't steal money. We didn't hide anything anywhere. So let them check. All these traditional rulers who please calm down and allow the people in authority to do their work. Well, they should allow the people in authority to do their work.
On that note, Mr. Dan Kunle, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us on This Day Live, the Sunday talk show.